My name is Jasmine Carter, and when I was 16, my whole world fell apart. My dad, he was everything to me. He used to call me his little queen, and I believed him. I thought as long as he was around, nothing could ever hurt me. But then he was gone. Just like that. One morning, I woke up to the news that he'd passed away suddenly. No warning, no goodbye. I still remember how numb I felt, like I was floating outside my own body, watching the world keep turning while mine stopped dead in its tracks. After Dad died, everything changed. The house I loved became a place I feared. My stepmom, Karen, moved in and took control like she owned everything. And somehow, I didn't belong anymore. Before, Dad always made me feel special. But now, Karen made it clear I was invisible. No more sitting at the family table with them. No more laughs or hugs. Just silence. Cold, heavy silence that filled every corner of the house. I wasn't even allowed to have a voice. If I said anything, Karen would snap at me or ignore me completely. I became nothing more than the girl who did the chores, washing dishes, cooking meals, cleaning floors. The worst part? This was supposed to be my home. I'd lie awake at night, wondering how Dad could have let this happen. How could the man who called me his queen let me be pushed out like I was a stranger? Years passed. Every day I tried to remind myself of who I was, the daughter of a man who loved me. But it was hard when the people around me treated me like a maid, like I was just a shadow nobody cared about. Still, somewhere deep inside, I held on to hope. I kept thinking, this can't be all there is for me. Dad's love wasn't gone. And one day, maybe soon, I'd find a way to prove it. To show everyone what they refused to see. Because no matter what they did, I was still his daughter. And I was going to fight to be treated like one. After Dad passed away, Karen didn't just move into the house. She took over like it was hers from the start. I remember the day she made it clear I wasn't part of the family anymore. It was a normal evening, but instead of sitting with everyone at dinner like I used to, Karen told me to eat in the kitchen. "You don't need to be around adults," she said with that cold smile. That moment hit me like a punch to the gut. I wasn't just invisible. I was erased. The girl my father loved was gone, replaced by someone nobody seemed to care about. I tried to speak up, to tell Karen how unfair it was, but she shut me down every time. "You'll learn your place," she said. Slowly, the house became less like a home and more like a prison. I wasn't allowed to have friends over. My clothes and things were ignored, and whenever my stepbrother came home, Karen made sure he was the center of attention. I remember one Christmas when Dad was still alive, how he'd make the whole family laugh and feel close. Now, those memories felt like a distant dream. Karen didn't want me to have that warmth. She had her favorites, and I wasn't one of them. I was the help, the girl who cleaned up after everyone else. I scrubbed floors until my hands ached, cooked meals no one thanked me for, and did laundry like a ghost, always unseen and unheard. But no matter how much Karen tried to push me down, I refused to disappear completely. I found little moments to remind myself who I really was, Dad's daughter, the girl he called Little Queen. At night, when the house was silent and the world felt far away, I'd whisper to myself, "One day this will change. I won't be invisible forever." Karen thought she won. But she hadn't met me yet. Living in my own father's house and feeling like a maid, that's the kind of pain nobody talks about. But that was my reality. Every day, I woke up knowing I'd spend hours cleaning, cooking, and serving people, who barely even noticed me. Karen made it clear I wasn't family anymore. The house echoed with laughter and conversations where my name was never mentioned. I was the invisible shadow moving through rooms, picking up after people who smiled politely but never really saw me. I'd carry heavy trays of food and drinks to the dining room, making sure every glass was full and every plate was cleared. Guests would thank Karen or my stepbrother, but I was just the help. Sometimes when I was alone in the kitchen, I'd let the tears fall. Not loud cries, just quiet sobs that no one could hear. It wasn't just the chores. It was the fact that this was supposed to be my home, my family, and yet I was treated like a stranger. The worst was knowing Dad had loved me so much. He had promised to protect me, to always be there. But now, it felt like those promises were broken, buried under Karen's cold control. Still, I kept pushing through. I had to, because giving up meant losing myself completely. I held on to tiny sparks of hope, little moments when I'd remember Dad's words, his smile, and how proud he was of me. I started dreaming of a future where I'd no longer be invisible, where I'd have a voice and a place to belong. But for now, I kept my head down and did what was expected. Every meal I cooked, every floor I scrubbed, I reminded myself, this isn't forever. One day I'd prove my worth. One day, I'd reclaim the life that was stolen from me. Until then, I was the quiet girl in the background, the maid in my own home. But my story was far from over. Years passed, and with each one I felt smaller and smaller. The house grew colder, and so did the people inside it. Karen ruled with an iron fist, and my brother followed her lead without question. I became a ghost. Always there, never seen. I learned to keep my mouth shut. Speaking up only brought more pain, more rejection. So I swallowed my pride and buried my dreams deep inside, hiding them from everyone. I told myself that this silence was temporary, that someday I'd break free. School became my escape. I threw myself into my studies, using books and late-night homework sessions as a shield against the loneliness at home. I wanted to prove that I was more than just a servant, more than the girl who cleaned up after others. But even that wasn't easy. Without my parents' support, I worked part-time jobs just to afford textbooks and supplies. I didn't complain, because I knew if I did, Karen would remind me I was lucky to even have a roof over my head. Friends were hard to come by. I couldn't bring anyone home because I was ashamed of how my family treated me. So I kept my distance, always feeling like an outsider even among people who liked me. Every night I cried myself to sleep, quiet tears no one ever heard. But I never lost sight of the hope Dad had given me. I clung to the memory of his love like a lifeline. It wasn't just about surviving anymore. It was about fighting back. One day, I promised myself, I'd reclaim my place. I'd make Karen and everyone else see me for who I really was, because no matter how long it took, no matter how hard the road, I wasn't going to disappear. I was still Jasmine Carter, Dad's daughter, his little queen. And I was ready to rise. The day of my brother's wedding was supposed to be a celebration, a moment to finally feel like part of the family again. But instead, it was the final, crushing reminder of how far I'd fallen. I bought my own dress for the occasion, a simple, modest thing. Nothing fancy, just something I could afford with the little money I'd saved from my part-time jobs. Meanwhile, Karen and the others wore diamonds, designer gowns, and expensive suits. They flaunted their wealth like it was a trophy, making me feel even smaller. From the moment the guests arrived, I was pushed to the sidelines. No seat at the ceremony, no part in the photos, no kind word. I was ordered to stay in the kitchen, refilling drinks, carrying trays, and cleaning up after everyone. People whispered behind their hands. Some of the guests, even strangers, asked why the bride's sister wasn't seated with the family. I overheard the confusion, the pity, and sometimes the judgment. But I stayed silent. I didn't want to make a scene or give them the satisfaction of seeing me hurt. So I kept working, pretending I was invisible, even though every word stung like a slap. That night, As I wiped down tables and swept the floor, I felt like a ghost haunting a party that wasn't meant for me. It was the lowest I'd ever felt. But deep down, beneath the shame and pain, something started to stir. A quiet fire, a refusal to be erased any longer. I went home that night feeling broken but determined. This couldn't be the end of my story. There had to be a way to take back what was mine, the love, the respect, and most of all, my father's legacy. Little did I know, everything was about to change. Because the next morning, I wasn't just going to be the invisible girl in the kitchen anymore. I was going to make sure everyone saw me and finally understood who I really was. The morning after the wedding, I woke up with a heaviness I couldn't shake. My heart still hurt from the night before, but something inside me whispered that it was time to stop hiding. I reached into my drawer and pulled out a letter, something I had kept secret for years. It was from Dad. He had written it 6 months before he died, a will sealed and notarized. But somehow Karen had hidden it from me all this time. With trembling hands, I called my lawyer and arranged a video call. I wasn't sure what to expect, but I knew this was my moment. When the lawyer appeared on the screen, I held up the letter and read the words aloud. The house, the land, and all my savings are solely for my daughter Jasmine. No one has the right to remove her or treat her unjustly in my absence. The words hit like a thunderbolt. This was my birthright, my father's promise still standing, waiting to be claimed. I could almost feel Dad's presence in the room, like he was finally protecting me even after he was gone. I sent the letter and documents to the family. Almost immediately, Karen's face turned pale when she realized the truth was out. My brother froze. The relatives fell silent. For the first time, I wasn't invisible. I wasn't the girl in the kitchen. I was the rightful owner of everything. The lawyer spoke. I stood tall, calm, and steady. Effective immediately, he said. All non-beneficiaries must vacate the property. This house belongs to Jasmine Carter. It was more than a legal declaration. It was a statement of justice, something I had waited years to hear. That morning, I didn't scream or cry. I simply took back what was always mine. And in that moment, I became more than just a daughter. I became the rightful mistress of my own home. When the news hit them, the house fell into a stunned silence. Karen's face drained of color, like she had seen a ghost. My brother, who had barely looked at me in years, suddenly couldn't meet my eyes. Even the relatives stopped, their chatter, their whispers replaced by awkward quiet. I stood there, calm but inside. My heart was racing. After all the years of being invisible, ignored, and mistreated, this was my moment. The moment they had all tried to erase. Karen tried to argue, her voice shaking. This can't be real. That letter, maybe it's fake. But my lawyer was ready. He showed the notarized documents, the signatures, the dates. There was no denying it. Slowly, the truth sank in. The house, the land, the savings. Everything belonged to me. No one could take it away. I could see the fear in their eyes, the panic as their comfortable control slipped through their fingers. For years, they had built a life on lies and manipulation, pushing me aside like I was nothing. But now, the game had changed. No more hiding in the shadows. No more silent tears. This was my home, my inheritance, my future. And I was ready to fight to keep it. Quietly, firmly, and with all the strength I had. Karen's control was broken. The family dynamics shifted overnight, but I knew this was only the beginning. After the shock settled, I finally stepped into the role I was born to have. The house, the place where I'd once been a ghost, was now my kingdom. But claiming it wasn't as simple as just standing tall. Karen and my brother resisted every step. They packed their bags, refusing to leave without a fight. There were whispered threats, attempts to turn relatives and neighbors against me. But I was no longer scared. With my lawyer by my side, I stood firm. I knew every inch of this house belonged to me. Every room held memories of my dad's love, and I wasn't about to let anyone steal that away. For the first time in years, I slept peacefully under my own roof, without fear or shame. I decorated my room the way I wanted, played my music loud, and even invited a few close friends over. Karen's silence said it all. She had lost her power, and I was gaining mine. But beyond the house, I realized I had to rebuild the family I thought I'd lost. It wouldn't be easy. Some relationships were broken beyond repair. Others might need time, patience, and honesty to heal. Still, I was determined. I wasn't just reclaiming a house. I was reclaiming my life. For the first time, I felt like I truly belonged. With the house finally mine, I knew the hard part was just beginning. Rebuilding my life after years of being pushed aside meant facing wounds that ran deep. I started by setting boundaries. Clear, firm lines I wouldn't let anyone cross again. Karen tried to contact me, but I kept my distance. It was time to protect myself, not just my home. My brother was different. We had conversations, awkward at first, filled with silence and regret. But slowly, I saw glimpses of the brother I once knew. Maybe healing was possible, but only if he was willing to change. Friends who had stayed by my side became my chosen family. Their support reminded me I wasn't alone. I found joy in small things. A garden in the backyard, late-night talks, laughter that wasn't forced. I also focused on my dreams, college, career, a future where I was in control. For years, I'd felt trapped by my past. Now, I was free to write my own story. The house was no longer a symbol of pain, but a foundation for hope. Every corner held a memory, but also a promise that the future could be different. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was thriving. And with each new day, I grew stronger, wiser, and more certain that my father's love was guiding me still. Years of silence, pain, and invisibility had finally come to an end. Standing in the home my father left me, I no longer felt like the forgotten girl. I was the queen of my own life. Every step I took in that house reminded me of my journey, the battles I'd fought, the tears I'd shed, and the strength I found deep inside. This wasn't just a house anymore. It was my sanctuary, my victory. I looked in the mirror one morning and saw not just Jasmine, the girl who was pushed aside, but Jasmine, the woman who refused to be broken. Friends, neighbors, even family began to see me differently. No longer the quiet maid, but a woman who stood tall with dignity and grace. I dedicated myself to making my father proud, pursuing my dreams with passion and purpose. College, a career, building a life where I was in control. And the best part? I did it on my own terms. Karen and my brother? They became part of a past chapter. I forgave where I could, but I never forgot the lessons learned, because I knew this truth. No one can take away your worth unless you let them. I had lost a father, but I had found myself. I was no longer invisible. I was Jasmine Carter, daughter, queen and rightful mistress of her own story, and this time I was here to stay.